Welcome to Future Epoch, where we learn more about our world. In 2018, a scandal broke that would force one of the world's most powerful companies to pay $5 billion in penalties, drag its founder before the United States Congress, and raise a question that still hasn't been fully resolved. Can the data you share on social media be weaponized to change the way you vote? The extraordinary thing is not that someone tried. The extraordinary thing is how easy it turned out to be, and how long it was happening before anyone noticed. The story begins not with a political campaign or a foreign intelligence operation, but with a personality quiz offered freely on the internet. By the early 2010s, Facebook had assembled what was arguably the most detailed voluntary database of human behavior in history. Over 1 billion users were sharing their interests, relationships, political opinions, and daily routines. The platform monetized this through targeted advertising, and it opened its data infrastructure to third-party developers, allowing them to build applications that connected directly to users' accounts. For most of this period, Facebook's API permitted those apps to collect data not only from the users who had installed them, but from their friends as well, people who had never agreed to share anything with the application at all. This was documented in Facebook's terms of service. Almost nobody read it. Regulators barely glanced at it. And for a brief window, it made Facebook's social graph available to anyone creative enough to build the right tool. That window, left open long enough, would expose the data of up to 87 million people. The sequence of events that would become the Cambridge Analytica scandal began in 2013, when a Cambridge University academic named Alexander Kogan created a Facebook application called This Is Your Digital Life. It presented itself as a personality quiz. Roughly 270,000 users installed it and agreed to share their data. But through Facebook's API, Kogan's app simultaneously harvested profile data from the friends of each of those users, people who had never consented to participate and, in most cases, had no idea the app existed. Kogan then transferred this data to Cambridge Analytica, a political data consultancy registered in the United Kingdom. The company was backed by Robert Mercer, a reclusive American billionaire with strong conservative political convictions, and had significant involvement from Steve Bannon, who would later become a senior advisor in Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. This transfer violated Facebook's platform policies, which explicitly prohibited selling or sharing user data with external parties. Facebook claimed it became aware of the breach in 2015. And requested that Kogan and Cambridge Analytica delete the data. It did not independently verify that this had actually happened. Cambridge Analytica used the harvested data to construct what it called psychographic profiles of American voters. The company applied a psychological model known as OCEAN, which assesses openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, and claimed it could use these profiles to predict individual political preferences and target voters with messages specifically engineered to resonate with their psychological characteristics. The firm worked with Ted Cruz's 2016 Republican primary campaign and subsequently with Donald Trump's general election campaign. Questions also emerged about connections between Cambridge Analytica and the Leave EU campaign during the United Kingdom's Brexit referendum, though the precise nature and extent of that relationship remained disputed and was never fully resolved by investigators. For several years, this arrangement remained hidden. Then, in March 2018, The Guardian and The Observer published testimony from Christopher Wiley, a former Cambridge Analytica employee who had decided to speak out. Wiley described in detail how the company had acquired Facebook data without meaningful consent, built psychological profiles of tens of millions of Americans, and sold those profiles as a precision instrument for influencing elections. The public reaction was immediate and intense. But the scandal contained a tension that has never been fully resolved. Cambridge Analytica made sweeping claims about its ability to identify and micro-target psychologically vulnerable voters with individually tailored political messages. Whether these techniques actually delivered measurable influence over electoral outcomes is, by the assessment of most independent researchers, genuinely uncertain. The evidence for large-scale persuasion effects from psychographic targeting is, at best, mixed. What was not in dispute was the conduct itself. Data had been collected without genuine informed consent, transferred in clear violation of platform rules, and deployed in political campaigns affecting democratic processes in at least 2 major Western nations. Mark Zuckerberg was called before the United States Congress in April 2018 to answer for Facebook's role in the scandal. His testimony exposed an uncomfortable reality. Many of the legislators questioning him appeared to have a limited understanding of how the platform they were scrutinizing actually functioned. The consequences were significant, though a broad coalition of privacy advocates, researchers, and legislators argued they were disproportionately small relative to the scale of the problem. Cambridge Analytica itself dissolved in May 2018, declaring insolvency after the publicity made it commercially unviable. In July 2009, the United States Federal Trade Commission reached a settlement with Facebook that included a $5 billion penalty, the largest privacy fine the agency had ever imposed. Facebook also entered into a 20-year consent decree requiring it to establish independent privacy oversight structures and to be more accountable for how third-party developers accessed user data. In the United Kingdom, the Information Commissioner's Office fined Facebook £500,000, the maximum permitted under the Data Protection Act 1998, as it then stood. The ICO also conducted a broader investigation into how data analytics had been used across political campaigns, documenting significant weaknesses in the regulatory framework governing political advertising. The UK Parliament's Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Committee published a detailed report on disinformation and fake news that was sharply critical of Facebook's response to the scandal and called for more robust platform regulation. Alexander Nix, Cambridge Analytica's chief executive, was suspended after undercover footage recorded him making claims about the company's methods that included references to entrapment and bribery. He was later disqualified from serving as a company director in the United Kingdom. Facebook revised its developer access policy substantially, ending the broad friend data harvesting that had made the breach possible in the first place. The Cambridge Analytica story is sometimes reduced to a simple narrative about one rogue consultancy misusing data. That framing understates what the scandal revealed. For years, the infrastructure underpinning social media platforms had been treating personal data as a freely transferable commodity, with consent mechanisms that were technically present but practically meaningless. Most users had no realistic understanding of what they were agreeing to, what could be done with their information, or who might eventually gain access to it. The scandal forced that reality into public view. It also demonstrated something important about how democratic institutions respond to rapid technological change, slowly and often with incomplete understanding. The questions Cambridge Analytica raised about data consent, platform accountability, and the integrity of political advertising have since been addressed in legislation and regulatory frameworks introduced across the United Kingdom, the European Union, and parts of the United States. But enforcement remains uneven. Data practices continue to evolve faster than regulators can follow, and the underlying economic incentives that made the breach possible have not fundamentally changed. The $5 billion fine was, for Facebook, a historically large number. In the context of the company's annual revenues, it represented roughly 1 month of income. Critics observed that a penalty calibrated to the severity of the breach rather than to a fixed ceiling would have looked very different. The company that collected data without meaningful consent grew larger after the scandal than before it. The regulatory frameworks written in response are stronger than what preceded them, but the gap between the pace of technology and the reach of regulation remains wide. Cambridge Analytica no longer exists. But the data it harvested, the techniques it refined, and the vulnerabilities it exploited outlasted the company by a considerable margin. The deeper question the scandal posed, who is responsible for protecting the integrity of democratic choice in a world built on personal data, has received partial answers and continues to generate debate. It may be one of the defining questions of this era of digital life, and it remains, as yet, unresolved. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel.